Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our First NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. The NFL preseason is here for the hometown New Orleans Saints, playing at St. Louis against the Rams, of course, a Friday night game. And Lenny, obviously, the storyline here is don't get anybody hurt, don't play Drew Brees, and find out about your younger players in particular, because realistically you're talking about maybe 4 or 5 roster spots.
You really are when you get down to it, and a lot of those decisions are going to get made by how many guys you have to carry at certain spots. The thing to really watch in these preseason games more than anything else may not be offense or defense, but special teams. Punt coverage, kick coverage, those types of things. You see guys making plays there. That is where a guy can make a roster. You know, that's going to be those last spots. That's going to be the difference maker, whether you carry 5 or 6 wide receivers, whether you carry 10 or 11 defensive backs, those types of things where you've got some depth at positions. Special teams is really the area you want to watch, especially with these young players, to see how they might be successful there. And that may indeed earn them a spot on the 53 come September 7th.
Yeah, I think in particular there are a few situations that Lenny refers to that certainly bear watching. Joe Morgan, can he contribute on special teams again and be a prime return guy for them? Because that could be a roster spot for him. Vinny Sinceri, will they carry 5 safeties? If you're good enough as a special teams player, that's a possibility. And also, you always watch who's holding for place kicks, right?
Absolutely. That can tell you something about who the backup may be. And that's another thing. Will you see 2 quarterbacks? Will you see 3 quarterbacks? As Jude and I were talking about on Monday in the weekend review, you know, when those guys got a lot of work in the black and gold scrimmage because Drew Brees was held out, you know, you can carry Ryan Griffin as a second quarterback and not keep a third. If you carry Luke McCown as a second and they think enough of Griffin, now they might be keeping 3 quarterbacks, and you might not be able to slip him through waivers to put him back on the practice squad, so that might burn up a roster spot if you really think Ryan Griffin could be the guy of the future. Of course, if Drew Brees plays until he's 45, then it'll be somebody who's in about 5th or 6th grade right now who will be potentially the next starting quarterback. So.
Remember when Colin Kaepernick was a rookie and the 49ers played the Saints in a preseason opening game, and wow, Greg Williams blitzed them the entire half, sacked them, 6 or 7 times, and people were scratching their heads saying, huh? Don't be surprised if Greg Williams blitzes a lot in this game.
You know what was interesting in that? And I was working in the truck for the 49ers broadcast that night, and the response coming back from San Francisco, because one of the features that we had inside the broadcast was fan questions for the announcers. And everybody wanted to know, hey, Alex Smith can't play. Can Colin Kaepernick start week 1? And that was Kaepernick's first game as a pro. And he was running around for his life out there. Alex Smith, looked totally inept in 3 series. And, they were looking to put Kaepernick on the field. Well, of course, lo and behold, that is what eventually would happen a year and a half down the road, but it was Alex Smith that led the 49ers to a terrific season in 2011 that year. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just what Greg Williams does. Same kind of situation, if you will. One of the things, if I remember right, Williams had a chance to get that 49ers job when they hired Jim Harbaugh, and I think that was one of the things that was really kind of a burr that was bothering Williams at that point.
Safe to say no love lost between the two sides. Sean Payton will not converse with him before the game, it appears. And Drew Brees has said some things about Williams that he probably didn't like much either. So good thing that Brees is not going to play in this game. He doesn't have to. So, of course, you can follow full coverage at SportsNola.com. LSU and Tulane in camp now, getting ready for the seasons. I guess the biggest news from early on this week was that a prominent defensive back is on the field for LSU despite off-the-field issues. A prominent receiver for Tulane is on the field despite off-the-field issues. And then of Tulane, of course, everybody will be watching the quarterback battle now as well.
Well, and in both places for that matter. I mean, you're going to see who is going to be the starting quarterback come Labor Day weekend for both of those teams. Tulane, it's really more of a 3-way battle. LSU, it's obviously a 2-headed battle. That's probably the key thing we're focusing on. We'll hear a lot more from the coaches here in the next couple of days. Tulane's Media Day Thursday afternoon, LSU's Media Day Sunday afternoon. We'll get some more insight from Curtis Johnson, from Les Miles, as to how things stand here early on in camp.
It's going to be interesting, but if I had to venture a guess at this stage, I think they'll go in opposite directions. I think LSU will go with a guy that has some degree of experience, at least initially, but both will end up playing. And I think Tulane will go with a guy that doesn't have the experience to this point, but they'll end up playing more than one as well.
Yeah, I think if I would set it over-under at this point, I would put it at 3.5 or 4 on how many quarterbacks we'll see out of those two teams that will play in week 1.
Yeah, and, of course, the focus on both programs coming up this weekend as they start to get into camp even more. And we'll see some scrimmaging, some hitting and such, and obviously start to separate people and find out who the young guys are that are really going to have a chance to be on the field for both programs.
Yeah, and one thing we should mention, Tulane scrimmaging Saturday morning at Ted Gormley, if you want to go out and check some of that out. We are now 30 days here on Thursday, 30 days away from the opening of Yeoman Stadium. Field is just about 100% done. It looks like they got to make a couple of little tweaks perhaps, but that evolved itself over a 10-day process. It was pretty fascinating to watch that whole surface go down and what it takes to put down a playing surface from start to finish. And it's close. It's just about here.
The Zephyrs completed a long homestand, their longest ever. Started well against Omaha, really rough against Iowa, good finish against Nashville, kept them in the race, and it's good to see Brian Bogusevic back in action for the Z's.
Absolutely. He needed to get back in there, was out for a while, came back, did some damage, and the Z's are set up here. I mean, while you look at the standings, they're in last place, but they're only 3 games out. So, and they do have 10 games against Memphis. That's all they have left within the division starting on Thursday night, a 5-game series in Memphis. Memphis will come here for 5 at the end of the year, I believe it is. So it's, you've got some chances still to make up ground in the division, with those 10 games.
Lenny, it's always a pleasure. Thanks. Have yourself a great weekend.
All right, we'll see you Monday.
That's our First NBC Bank Weekend Preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. He's Lenny. I'm Kenny. You're you. Have yourselves a great weekend, and God bless.